And joining us today is Mareike Ohlberg. She's a senior fellow in the Asia program of the German Marshall Fund and co-author of the book Hidden Hand, exposing how the Chinese Communist Party is reshaping the world. Thank you so much for joining us today on China Unscripted.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Well, so, the situation in Europe has radically changed since Russia invaded Ukraine. I'm wondering, has that changed how Europe is viewing China?
So far, the largest part of the discussion has obviously been about how large parts of Europe were fundamentally wrong about Russia and how they completely, underestimated what Putin was going to do. However, we're beginning to see some voices saying that, we've made a lot of mistakes on Russia. And especially in Germany, where I'm based, we've made a lot of mistakes increasing our dependencies on Russian gas, Russian oil, Russian, resources to such a degree. Let's maybe not repeat that mistake with other authoritarian countries. And then, of course, the most important example that would always come up is China. I still think it's going to be a while before we really get to like a more fundamental debate of how we can actually, reduce our dependencies on China. But it's been brought up, and the overall debate environment has just changed quite a bit.
Could you tell us what Germany's dependencies are on China right now?
So on China, the biggest issues are, so it's often said that, the entire German economy is very much dependent on China as a market, as a production site. Is actually often exaggerated. Like if some people, some researchers have started going into the nitty-gritty and actually looking at, who is actually dependent on China, how dependent are we? If we were to, lose access to the Chinese market completely, how much damage would that cause? And obviously, you can't forecast that super reliably because it's a model and things can be different in reality. But basically, the main dependencies really are with a fairly small number of large and influential companies that have really made themselves dependent on China, both for production, but also for sales. That's the German automotive industry plus a couple of other companies. And then when you look further into that dependency, you find out is actually it's not really a one-sided dependency. It's more of an interdependence because a lot of the value that is created is actually, a lot of the jobs that are created are actually in China. So if, say, the Chinese government were to decide, we want to punish Germany for doing X, Y, and Z that angered us terribly, then if they were to, cut those companies off, yes, they would hurt Germany, but they would also hurt themselves because a lot of those jobs are created in China. A lot of this value is created in China. So yeah, they definitely be hurting the shareholders of those companies, but the impact on jobs in Germany wouldn't be as large as it's often made out to be. So that's a good thing. So once we actually get to a factual debate on dependencies on the Chinese market, I think we will find that we have a lot more options than we often think we have when people pretend that we're so terribly dependent on China, and so nothing we do, we have to simply go with what China demands of us. We're going to find out that, we're actually not that dependent, and those dependencies go both ways.
Well, I think one of the things the Russian invasion of Ukraine has kind of brought to light is that it seems like there is sort of this authoritarian bloc being created by China and Russia. You mentioned at the moment there's sort of this interdependency between Germany and China, but could we be seeing the rise of essentially like China and Russia forming a bloc that can just exclude Western powers and function without their economies?
So I'm slightly wary of anything that posits that there is like a super, that, China and Russia are best friends forever and are going to form like a.
Xi Jinping gave Putin a best friend medal.
Oh yeah,
Surely.
that's totally true. Like maybe that was a bad choice of word. He did say we're really good friends. And they did stand side by side to proclaim their new authoritarian world order on February 4th at the very apolitical Olympics, which have nothing to do with politics whatsoever, as we all know.
Well said.
So I'm not saying that there's no alignment between China and Russia. I do think that what holds them together is their like mutual hatred of the West and of the United States. I do think that's like the most binding access, the most binding factor for both of them. The desire to create a world order where there is no accountability for autocrats, basically, where you have big powers that have their sphere of influence, and in that sphere of influence, they can do whatever the heck they want, which is, I think, also why China keeps telling Europe, well, why don't you sit at the table with Russia and, come up with a new security architecture for Europe? Because to China, Russia is, the logical regional hegemon that should get a say in how Europe is structured, which, of course, is something that's absolutely unacceptable to most Europeans, except the handful that are also friends with Putin. So I do think there are some limits to what China and Russia can do together for a number of reasons. There's just some things that are going to be missing. However, of course, they can work together and cooperate more closely. And in any case, I guess the last point that I want to make here, because this comes up, I mean, this is an idiotic argument and we all know that, but it used to be maybe we could pry Russia away from China to like get on our side against China. And now all of a sudden we have this opposite argument where, people are arguing that, maybe we can pry China away from Russia and get China to side with us against Russia. And that is a nonsensical argument, because even if Russia and China do not have the closest of bloc alliances, China has its own reasons for wanting to use this war to make sure that the West comes out of it weakened, and not itself and its friends. And China is not going to be siding against Russia with the United States or with Europe or with anybody. They've made that super clear.
Yeah, you just have to look at all of everything they say about the war is essentially like it's America's fault, it's NATO's fault, it's the West's fault. And yet there are still people who are like, we can get them to help us.
Well, we need China to help us negotiate with Russia. We have to rely on China, Shelley.
Meanwhile, Chinese state-run media is also kind of backing Russia's claim about the Bucha massacre. It's like, Russia says, what about Russia's side of the story?
Yeah, it's a little absurd. It's like people have such, I don't know why people do it, but basically anything that China says that isn't straight up praise of Russia is seen as China shifting its position. And of course, the Chinese government knows quite well that, they know that they can communicate differently towards different audiences. And you've seen some of that in Europe where, the messages that the Chinese government has targeted at Europe have been less aggressive, more highlighting the constructive side. They have very much put the blame at NATO's, like had said, NATO and the US are to blame. And they haven't quite realized that this time around, America bashing isn't going to cut it in Europe. Like, it's worked many, many years. Like, for years, if you go to Europe and you say, America is big and bad and wants to hurt everybody, then that found an audience in Europe. But under the current circumstances where everybody knows who's the aggressor in this war, it's just not working. So somehow they haven't been able to move away from that. But other than that, they have softened some of their messaging, and haven't really used the very crazy stuff in their propaganda targeting Europe. So they're using that in their propaganda when they're, sometimes when they're targeting the US, sometimes when they're targeting the developing world. And they've tried to tone it down towards Europe, but and sometimes that's been successful in getting people to think, maybe there is hope, we can get China on board. I think some people may simply be hoping that they can get China to tone down its rhetoric a little bit and tone down its rhetoric and stop giving this full rhetorical cover to Russia in this war. Like, I don't think everybody's necessarily that stupid that they think China is going to side against Russia, but maybe some people are hoping that if China were to tone down its rhetoric, that would also help in providing less cover to Russia. The idea being that right now, basically, China is running around the world with its foreign ministers and other politicians getting other countries to sign on to the Chinese and Russian view. You know, Wang Yi going around getting statements from other foreign ministries around the world, basically getting up the numbers, trying to shore up support for the Russian/Chinese position. And if China were to stop doing that, that would also help. It would, stop undermining the EU position, the European position directly. But I think we all agree like that hope is most likely misplaced. I don't see China playing a significant role in any of this, and I don't even see China toning down its rhetoric, except when it's talking directly to Europeans, which then is useless if it keeps using the same talking points that are Russia's at home and when talking to other countries.